How many of you folks here, I want to phrase the question, how many of you folks here do not own a CoCo 3? Of the folks raising your hands, you folks own CoCo 2s or 1s or whatever, CoCo 1 or 2, yeah. Of the folks who have CoCo 2s, how many of you are thinking of acquiring a CoCo 3? Small fraction. Those who have their, of the people here, how many of you use your CoCos for word processing? Or writing. Excuse me? 3 or 2? Doesn't matter. Okay, word processing, yeah. Is that, how many use it as the primary use is word processing? Smaller fraction. Okay. How many use it for telecommunications? Actually larger fraction. Is that a primary use for those of you telecommunications? Yeah. Fairly large fraction. Games? What's a game? How many people play games on their CoCo?
Not good percentage. That makes me
Wishful thinking.
How many people expect to acquire a new game in the next 6 months? All right. Okay. Can someone, actually, I'll encourage you, outside of word processing, telecommunications, and games, graphics. Yes, let's have hands on graphics. How many of you folks ended up trying to do something with that article that I wrote on RGB monitors and how to take pictures of them? Anyone here photographing? No.
CGB 220 camera.
That's what I've got.
That's right. How many people?
I love it.
I mean, how many people that want to do graphics have not bought the graphics programs yet? Okay, that's what I kind of felt. The market is pretty much saturated. Everybody that wants to do graphics has already got the graphics programs.
There are quite a number of good ones.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is there's too
Yeah, but that
many.
doesn't necessarily mean
I feel right in place. Evidently, I keep my business records on my CoCo.
What do you use? What software do you use?
VIP.
VRP spreadsheets and database? Works well for you. Okay. How many other people use their CoCos for either spreadsheet or database? Care to call out what software you use? Dynacalc.
Dynacalc and VIP.
Excuse me, VIP.
Dynacalc and VIP.
Dynacalc and VIP. PenPal. You use PenPal. I'm actually quite interested in how people are using their machines. How many people here of those who use graphics, how many use CoCo Max 3? Okay. How about Color Max Deluxe or Color Max 3? CoCo Max 1 and 2? A fair amount there. There's a program called Graphicon. Anyone ever remember that? No.
I know this
How
is
about-
hands, but does anybody use the artist from Radio Shack?
I have the disc, but it's
I don't mind. I don't mind.
How about Rack Graphics? Does anyone use icon for Rack Graphics?
But
Just got it. Two just got it. Sure. Oh.
Although, people already have graphics programs, because he indicated, the market was flooded. It's not necessarily true. You may have different ones for various uses, like I have several, and I still purchase the Rack here because it does other things than what some of the other ones do.
Yeah,
And I use several graphic programs in conjunction with each other too.
I noticed that several people were excited about Rack Graphics. Of the major graphics programs, that's the only one with which I have almost no familiarity. Haven't even had a chance to see it in operation. It seems like some folks here have gotten fairly excited about it. Any of the folks who just got it, can somebody volunteer to raise your hand or speak up and tell me what about it attracted itself to you?
First of all, I have always preferred to enter graphics with my XPad, because I get better control than with a mouse.
Not many people have it.
Well, in fact, when the CoCo 3 came out, I revised the original XPad program to work on my CoCo 3, so I could use my XPad. And at one point, I got a patch for CoCo Max 2 that I could use my XPad with. The RAP, I don't know if it's in the programming or the mouse itself, seems to have better control on the screen than you have with the other mouse.
It's a physically different mouse. It's different technology of mouse. That doesn't surprise me to hear you say that. Yeah.
There's one thing that's a problem with trying to write a program to work with a graphics tablet with North Computer 3 graphics. The tablet's only got a resolution of 256 dots across, and you got 320 dot mode across on a Color Computer 3 in most of the graphics programs. So you'd be losing about 160 dots or so.
As far as getting a real fine resolution, but if you multiply in there, you can get the whole screen with graphics tablet, there's the printout, you get these resolutions.
Well, see, back in my office, we use a tablet, but it's for an IBM PC, and it's a far better resolution.
Steve.
Awful lot more stuff.
One of the things I found, I was speaking to some folks on Delphi. Anybody here recognize the name Noel Fallon? No one. Okay. He's a really good artist. He's a psychiatric nurse in Oklahoma, and he does a great deal of color computer art. Much of it with a curiously Oriental flavor, although he himself is not Oriental. I was telling you this because one of his techniques, he will draw his initial subjects with Graphicom, port them over to Color Max 3, and then use that to add color and shape to them. He's most comfortable with Graphicom, which he's used for years, but he wants to have the pictures on the CoCo 3 with the CoCo 3 colors and what have you, so he combines these two programs that way. It's kind of a pain, to be sure, but it gets the job done for him. How many folks here would have used techniques anything like that to draw pictures?
You just mentioned something to the fact that you do that a little bit, don't you? Or
You.
yeah, or
Well, one of the things that keeps people from doing that is the problem of converting one kind of file to another.
Well, that's one thing with the RAP. It does have a capability of bringing in 3 or 4 different formats directly.
I have to speak to Dave about the RAP, get some of his
You have to
literature.
remember, Dave developed the RAP as a professional product to be used at his office to do graphics. And it's probably one of the few graphic programs out there for the Color Computer 3 that is quite commonly used and was designed as a tool to be used. The other graphic programs, the authors have said, well, yeah, we use them, but we're not really artists, or we don't really use them all that much. Not a great deal. I have to admit, I'm subject to that with even one of my current programs. But the RAP was definitely used was developed for internal use, and they said, we'll market it too, and they brought it so it was more user-friendly.
One of the things that we have been trying to do on Delphi, we haven't yet completely succeeded, we've got this in part, but not fully, is to provide public domain utilities for both viewing all the different kinds of graphics files for the CoCo 3 and converting one to the other. We've had varying degrees of cooperation from the manufacturers of different programs. At this point, I'll stop mentioning names, but some varying all the way from here's our file format, have at it, to, tough, we don't want to tell you this. The latter response always struck me as sort of odd, because I could never see any way in which publicizing a given program's means of storing a picture could possibly hurt those who sold the program. It seemed to me it could only help them. Often with time, such folks mellow, and they tend to get more relaxed. Often, initially, any request for inside information is met with intense suspicion, and then gradually over time, folks will calm down and get more sensible about that sort of thing. Yeah, in the back.
I've got a question. It's been burning since yesterday. I wanted to come here and ask about. And sometimes on Delphi, I keep hearing in Rainbow how they've got information on changing the speech and sound cartridge so it'll work under OS 9 Level 2, but they won't put it in a Rainbow. I don't subscribe to Delphi, so I'm out in the cold, and I would like to be able to get this maybe even after you're done, get the information, because I have going to 3 CoCo 3s, all with speech and sound, and I want to be able to run OS 9 Level 1 or 2. I have gotten around it by writing a basic program using the hardware poke to slow the CPU. It can't be multitasking or doing anything else, but as long as I'm running that standalone, it can poke it, slow it down, send out the speech, and then turn around and restore and go back. But I would like to be able to make this thing so I can just use it, whether I'm using RS-DOS, Level 3, or anything, and not worry about it.
Steve Bjork here will correct me if I'm wrong, since he's actually done a bit of this sort of tinkering, whereas I've, in this particular area, also merely correlated things that others have told me. But My understanding is the problem with the speech sound pack is twofold. One is the fact that you need to get a lowered clock rate going to it for one of its internal processors. But there's a second problem. There's a voltage inverter circuit in the thing that runs off an oscillator. And the way they built that oscillator, it doesn't want to wiggle at 2 megahertz.
That's right.
And there have been a couple of fixes proposed.
I've got one at home where I can flip a switch, so I either basically will work correctly at 1 megahertz or 2 megahertz.
Well, can you just take and put a binary divider in there? Just a binary gate to divide the clock frequency in
If you're
half?
familiar with the schematic, if you'll notice the E and Q clocks are XORed together to give.
I don't have a schematic of it, so,
Let's see, you can order one from Radio Shack, or if you've got the later versions of them, in the back of the manual, they have the schematic. The smaller manual, not the big manual.
oh, the small manual does have the
It does
schematic.
have the schematic, and there's an E and Q clock that they XOR together. Well, what you do is you just simply take either the E or Q clock and jump it over the XOR. Because the E and Q clock XORing the signal doubles the speed. But you still have to put a divide by 2 flip-flop in, because the one oscillator requires one of the clocks to drive it, and that frequency at double speed is too fast.
Well, then I could just flip that clock, or that binary divider flip-flop. What do you use, a JK or a D or what?
Whatever, I use D's because they're easy.
Whatever's cheapest. I need to get with you then, I'd like to.
We'll take
I
that
have one other thing.
Yeah.
I've seen an awful lot of software over the last 4 or 5 years or so on using double-sided drives. They all seem to have $35 fixes for something that can be done for 10 cents with a diode.
I'm not quite sure what you're referring to here. You're talking about
Running double-sided drive, having access to the second side of a double-sided drive.
Okay. You
Okay.
can with either diodes or AND gates or OR gates.
The thing is, you don't need two pack. If you switch between operating systems
You know,
and go between RS-DOS and OS9, if you use the diodes under level 1, now under level 2 I'm using CDOS 3, which I've got it automatically, but
well, let me take a step back here.
All right.
You're quite right that there are two general different approaches to using two sides of a drive, one via software and one via hardware. The hardware approach you refer to can use either diodes or you can also use a single logic gate chip to accomplish the same effect. You use the side select signal and you combine that with a given drive select. I did that once for someone. For what it's worth, my own advice, I feel kind of negative towards the modification you're describing, principally because it locks you in to using the drive in that fashion unless you put a switch on it or something.
Well,
and locks you out of using OS9's capability to use a double-sided drive
Okay.
in its true sense.
But I was doing this long before I did this
Right.
when OS level 1 came out, say.
Right. And I did a similar mod
it
about
made
4
no
years
difference.
ago. Yeah.
And it made no difference then,
Right.
now it does.
No,
Right.
it does. The standard in the industry now for the color computer under OS on level 2, in a lot of other
Exactly.
cases, is to use a double-sided drive where the entire disk is looked at as one device.
As 1440 sectors.
Exactly.
Right, yeah, I do that
And
now.
that's where your hardware fix will not allow it to work correctly.
But when you get into this issue of fixing drives for even under Radio Shack's Disk Basic, the DECB, as I think it's most properly called, Disk Extended Color Basic, I'd advise against the hardware fix and also against the really simple software fix of merely changing the drive mask table, changing 2 bytes, because there's an added complication there. You might want to think about this. Anybody who's thinking of modifying Radio Shack's Disk Basic to handle a double-sided drive. Radio Shack's Disk Basic has to keep track of where the head is, the drive's head is. Every time it does a disk access, it updates a table, so that the next time it has to go to the drive, it knows where the head is and which direction to move it and how far to move it to get to another track. Now, if you define one side of the drive as one drive and one side of the drive as another drive, you initially run into a problem. Because let's say you access one side of the drive and then you go to access the other side of the drive. Now both heads in a single drive are always together. They're always going to be over the same track. So if you move the head for the other side. The head for the first side has been moved, but the table doesn't know that it's been moved. So the next time you go back to the original side to try to access anything, the drive gets confused as heck, and it does what we call head batting. It just tries to find it, it doesn't get where it thought it was going to go, and starts going, and then it finds itself, it resets itself and finds itself. That's why I tend not to recommend people make the simple patch for double-sided drives, and I tend to recommend they either buy ADOS or CDOS. I don't know, the CDOS may have that fix in it, it may not. Steve has put a fix on Delphi. It's a more elaborate fix, and what it doesn't just define one side of the drive as another drive. It also messes with the code in Disk Basic that updates the head position table so that if you move either side of the drive, both tables get updated. And so it's more than just two pokes. It's a little extra bit of code, a little patch. Say what?
And let you run at double speed.
Steve's particular little patch has the added advantage, as with ADOS, of allowing proper operation at double speed. How many folks are aware that there's a problem running your CoCo 3 at double speed under Disk Basic? How many folks are unaware that there was or should be or might be a problem? Okay, there is a problem that you really should be aware of.
Have you ever loaded in a file running at double speed and the basic program looks like garbage in sections? That will come from running at double speed. The same thing happens when you save a file and get a save error. It's just that it's not the floppy disk controller is too slow. There's some certain timing elements that are involved, and with the microcomputer running at twice the speed, these timing elements are happening too fast for this interface between the computer and the floppy disk drive.
See, the code for Disk Basic, the code that at the lowest level, the most nitty-gritty level, talks to the Western Digital controller chip in your disk controller, was written long before the CoCo 3 was ever conceived of. And part of that code in software has to do stuff like give a command to the disk controller chip and then pause for a bit to let the command, quote, settle, unquote. There were just certain idiosyncrasies of that chip that required that after you gave it a command, you had to wait before you told it to do something else, to act on that command. And so delays, there are various delays. Head settle delays, motor speed delays. Actually, motor speed delays aren't a problem because they're so huge. But anyway, they have certain delays in Disk Basic. When you speed up the computer, those delays end up being too short for the Western Digital chip and result in intermittently nasty operation, specifically garbling a file on input, garbling a file when you're writing, perhaps even a crash during disk I/O. I suppose that's rarer, more often is the garbling. In any case, what you have to do is go through all of that code in Disk Basic, find out where those delays are, and lengthen them. I might add that once you lengthen, those delays are real tiny. We're talking about difference between 4 microseconds and 10 microseconds, or a matter of a few milliseconds in some cases. It's not so if you go back to single speed operation with such a modified Disk Basic, you're not going to hurt anything, you're not going to even notice any difference in speed. But the difference is that you will now get reliable operation when the thing is going at double speed. Very early on, Steve scrambled to get a patch of that. So what was the name of their patch again, Steve? Defix, excuse me. Very early on, Steve recognized this and scrambled to put up a patch called Defix. Hi, Rick. Scrambled to put a patch called Defix on Delphi, which took care of a number of these little problems, modifying drives properly for double-sidedness, allowing proper reliable operation at double speed under Disk Basic. And I believe Defix also added a feature involving loading and saving graphics screens.
You can load in or save any of the high-res graphics screens. It would even remember the colors. It also wouldn't clear the screen whenever you selected that particular amount, which was kind of a pain. So it had some interesting fixes to the basic.
Yeah,
and
that's
up one or two other minor bugs that we didn't keep inside.
Well, I guess one of the things that has most bothered me about the CoCo 3 is that there are a number of these curious quirks, and unless you're following stuff on Delphi or reading Rainbow, they can be very puzzling, and in many cases, there's no way normally that you'd encounter them unless you're an assembly language programmer can disassemble the ROM and see why these things happen. All that you see is that something isn't working quite right. And again, all the more reason that we need to have communication among people who own and use the machine via Rainbow or via Delphi Information Services. Yeah.
I have two questions concerning the multi-packs. One is your opinion on, this is especially important in OS 9, to number one, hotwire the interrupts together on all 4 slots, and the B part of the modification is then having hotwired that is also to bring it right over and stick it right into your 6809 and the CoCo 3. How do you feel about those? And the other...
I'll start.
Yeah, right. And the other question has to do with whether or not there's ever going to be a new multi-pack. Because now somebody who thought they had good lines in the Radio Shack says, oh, they had this great description of the new multi-pack. Someone else who has even closer ties to Radio Shack says, well, gee whiz, there's no way Radio Shack's ever going to make a new multi-pack because they got warehouses stuffed full of the old ones. Of course, that immediately brings guffaws from anybody, because if they got warehouses full, how come they're not?
Hanging up here.
Yeah, I mean, they could, they could unload them for $70.
Okay, we've got basically 2 questions, one relating to modifications of the multi-pack to facilitate running of OS 9 type software, and the second, the whole issue of the existing multi-pack, how many there are, and that whole thing. The latter question, I'll refer entirely to Steve. I think that's specifically one of the reasons he's here, to field that sort of a question. In part because I don't have any inside sources of information as to why multi-packs are scarce in some places and abundant in others. I will say that what Steve's about to tell you and what you began to suggest is something that I have heard from sources other than Steve. With all due respect to Steve, I've heard exactly the same story from 1 or 2 other sources. So I mean, either it's true or it's a very well planted lie. I suspect it's true, quite frankly. In any case, regarding the modification of the multi-pack, I'll start by saying certainly it would have been nice if from the start they designed the multi-pack to run out the FIRQ and the IRQ lines to the system bus, or designed the CoCo for that matter. They didn't.
And the
They just never ran out those 2 interrupt lines to the CoCo system bus, and that has been a sore point with power users and what have you types from the very start. There was, at one point, as I understand it, a proposal for a revision of the multi-pack that would involve hardwiring the interrupt line to all the slots. And from what I understand, and Steve will amplify on this was actively discussed, and for one reason or another, they ultimately decided not to do it. But it certainly was considered, and people at the highest levels were at least made aware that it might be a desirable thing to do. I think at that point, I'll let Steve amplify that, because you did bring up some interesting points.
Essentially, wiring, as he suggested, all the lines together of the cartridge interrupt line directly to the microprocessor's IRQ port is being done quite a bit by a lot of the power users of OS 9 Level 2. The reason for this is the gimme can only handle so many interrupts coming in at one time, essentially one. If it gets 2 interrupts, it might forget or not see the second interrupt. Where the CPU is a little different and it would see the interrupt. Even though it's service 1, it would still be able to service the other interrupt that's pending. So somebody that has a deluxe RS-232 card and a no-hole controller with interrupts on it, and whatever else he may have on a system with interrupts, it's very important for them to do this. This is typically the way that a S50 bus 6809 system is usually put together. Now, on the color computer multi-pack, the reason why they didn't do this originally is hence the name, multi-pack. You can plug in multi-packs into them, and a lot of the packs that Radio Shack had in the original days were cartridges, and the cartridges tied the clock line of the computer to the interrupt line, so when you plug the cartridge in, it immediately went into the cartridge because of an interrupt. That was the main function for that little interrupt line in the early days. They never realized the color computer, since those original design phases, would ever turn into the system that it is today. Originally it was designed as a game machine. It was actually an afterthought to a Videotex terminal system. The Videotex terminal, which is long dead, came before the color computer. And the guys in Motorola gave them a design for a computer, and they said, okay, we'll go give it a try, we'll see what happens. And lo and behold, it became one of the most successful computers they ever put together.
and the line is still doing very well. And a lot of people have been talking about rumors about the machine dying. Well, Tandy is a dollars and cents company. If they can make a profit on an item, they'll continue manufacturing it. And dollar for dollar that goes into the color computer, they generate a greater profit than they do on the Tandy 1000 line. So, you know, they continue to sell things. I mean, how many people have seen this Radio Shack telephone testing machine that's in all these stores? There's one per store, $300. Do you think they're selling you those? But they'll have it in each catalog for several years to come. Now, if Tandy could sit there and manufacture and sell a single item like that and have practically no return on it except for testing users' telephones, what makes you think they're going to drop a profitable product in their store line? Now, true salespeople, I know I got off a little bit of subject, but that was kind of one of my pet peeves. Now, as far as a new multi-pack, they have discussed it, they've looked at it. Basically, Radio Shack's real answer to that is, what do you really need a multi-pack for? Users really don't plug in multiple ROM packs into their multi-pack anymore. They don't sell a deluxe RS-232 card. A lot of the other devices that would plug into the multi-pack is just what's in the warehouse and that's it. Also, they have a tremendous number of multi-packs left in the warehouse at the current rate that they sell them to the number of users that buy color computers. And by the way, only 2% of every color computer user buys a multi-pack. That's a very low figure. They've got enough to last them for several years. Hence, we never saw a specialized Color Computer 3 version of the multi-pack that needs to be patched. They got too many sitting in the warehouse to do it. They'll do it as they sell the multi-packs. True, I grant you they should do it for free to any Color Computer 3 user, but I'm not Tandy, so I can't make those decisions. But definitely, there's no new multi-pack. Tandy is seriously looking at the Deathstrail CRC Supercontroller 2 to be carried as an express order hardware line as soon as he gets all the proper materials to Tandy. And they will also probably pick up a few of his cards to carry in an express order. So when a user comes in and says, well, I want to have an RS-232 card, well, Tandy will sit there and say, well, we've got this disk controller and we've got this card that plugs in that does RS-232, you're all set. And that seems to be the direction they're headed into, getting away from the multi-pack.
I just wanted to take a moment. We were talking about telecommunications a moment back. I was asking about it, so more to the point. How many of you folks here use my key term? How many of you folks here use Greggy term? How many of you folks here use Ricky term?
No, that was a mistake before. That's the one that.
Ah! In that case, you sir. It's that keyboard rollover, Rick. I'd like to just take a moment to introduce to all of you, even though you've just made him feel awful. I'd like to take a moment to introduce to all of you a very good friend of mine, and rather a fixture on Delphi and on the Color Computer and OS 9 SIG, and the author of a number of popular pieces of color computer software. My friend Rick Adams, who just finished a talk. Stand up. Pirouette. Who will shortly be coming out with an improved version of
Dino Wars, the next generation.
How many folks here are on Delphi? Ooh, nice large number. Oh, nice.
Where's Marty term?
Say what?
Where's Marty term?
Let's get you in the vibe.
I think I'll actually snub my friend Dale Lear in the back there. Yeah, take a bow.
Where's Leary term?
Yeah.
There is a Lear term. As a matter of
There
fact.
is a Stevie term, but I never had the guts to call it that.
That actually is true. There is a program called CoTerm, written by Steve Bjork for conferencing.
How about a vector processor adapter? You call it the Cray CoCo.
Is it Augsburg program? No, never mind.
Wouldn't that be better to call it the Great Race?
Well, we could call it CoCo
Combine it
Cray
with the
instead
rat,
of
you
CoCo
got
3.
rat
That'd be the
race.
next generation.
Got a question for the Delphi users. Any one of you folks here who are Delphi users care to volunteer, now that you've got a particularly direct line, some feedback about the system, things that you like or don't like about it, tales of some good or bad experience on it, or suggestions of how we can give you better service.
It's too
How about a global
expensive.
go command?
Too expensive.
I would like a global go command.
A global go command. What's a global go command?
Well, a go lets you go directly to a menu, but you have to be in a main menu of some kind to begin with. From sub-menus, it doesn't work at all. Okay, and that is very
You
irritating.
can stack together commands in the sense that you can stack together an exit from one menu with an entry to another menu. And
Yeah,
then
I
a
do
command.
that.
It's a little uncomfortable, but you
Right.
can do it on a single
I
line.
would like to see a global go, though. That would be very nice.
Yeah.
Get one.
Be a little more specific.
Like type go X menu from any place, like from a sub-menu, like from a database menu.
Okay, let's say you want to go from forum to the database
Yeah, directly, why not?
without going through the CoCo Sig Pro.
Why heck not?
Well, I don't have any objection to that. So I get a clear idea of just what you're asking.
Yeah.
Controls the
Okay.
data.
Yeah, and
I should ask
the standard argument, with existing software, you can sort of do that, but via,
Inconvenient.
yeah, it's not elegant. It's not orthogonal, it's not elegant, it's not convenient, yes.
Keep in mind, Delphi has stayed away from page numbers,
Yeah.
and it's real difficult to tell it exactly where to go without including all of the qualifiers anyway, in a go command even.
There's another problem too, especially in the mail file. When you send a piece of workspace work to somebody's mail file, it ends up in his mail file, even if it's binary. That can be a hell of a problem if he tries to list it.
So wait, say that again, because I think what you're saying is actually not a flaw, but a feature, but say that again.
Yes, I understand that. I love the gobbledygook that comes up when you try to list out a binary file, but let's say you upload something to your workspace and then
Right.
transfer it by mail send to somebody else. It will
Oh.
come up on his mail
Okay.
file as a listable file, and then all of a sudden his screen turns into gobbledygook for about 20 minutes.
Okay, you've actually brought up something that
It's gotta be a way to
it's more of a feature than a flaw, although I understand what you're saying.
There should be a way to flag binary files so they can't be
Right.
listed.
Well, yeah, okay. What I've periodically told people to do when they transfer, the important point, the important point that you've sort of glossed over in the course of your complaint, and it's a valid complaint, is the fact that it is possible, in fact relatively easy, to transfer binary files privately, user to user, through mail on Delphi. And that's a real valuable and powerful and positive feature. That's where I was getting the word feature from there.
Yeah.
But you're quite right in saying that if you don't have a means of communicating to the person receiving the file that this is a binary file, they'll blindly go ahead and list it and see gobbledygook, and that's irritating, annoying, and inelegant. And I agree with you on that. What I personally do, and I do a fair amount of transfer of binary files through mail to myself and other staff and what have you, I usually send a cover letter. I'll first send a letter saying, the next file you're going to receive is the yada 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 file. It'll be binary, and it's the one we talked about.
Mhm.
And, you know,
I
2-3
usually
line
do that,
letter.
too. I usually would have to do that also, but it seems to me that there should be something in Delphi that can flag something like that as non-ASCII don't list, or at least prompt, do you want to list it? You know, that seems a very simple thing to program.
I'll
into
mention
system
that.
software.
I'll mention that to our systems programmers. The many times I've listed that gobbledygook, I too have wondered, why should I bother? It's a valid point. It's not, on the other hand, it's more of a bit of inelegance than a major flaw.
Yeah.
It's
That's
in
why
the
I'm saying it's
category
very
of
simple.
very minor nuisance.
That's why I'm mentioning it. It should be
Right.
something that's a very simple thing to fix it in the program. You know, it's not a big
How
deal.
about more major nuisances? I will ask about that.
Yeah.
It's a valid point. Yeah.
What about the slowness to respond to control commands?
That's a TIMNet curiosity.
Yeah.
That is in comparison to say, I
Well,
upload
how are you hooked up to the system?
300 baud,
Via,
well, I
TimeNet?
bought, in
Telenet?
comparison, say, to CompuServe.
well, but are you hooked up via TimeNet or Telenet?
I can't-
The reason I ask is that
Which is the one that says, type terminal identifier?
That's Telenet.
TimeNet is a little faster than TimeNet.
Yeah, it is.
The bottom line is that CompuServe has their own set of nodes.
Oh, I see.
Delphi rents them from someone else, rents service off a big company that has telecommunications. CompuServe was able to optimize their set of nodes for their system to an extent that so far Delphi has been unable to do, but is working on it. They are working with TimeNet and Telenet.
It's not a direct-
service. It's not a function of the Delphi computers, it's a function of the service that they're renting to hook you to their computers.
Of course, you could always dial directly into Delphi.
Yeah, it goes for a pretty penny if you're distant.
Yeah,
from
about
Boston.
18 bucks an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, the complaint I have is that, the various ways of when you're in the forum and reading stuff, there are lots of neat modes you can use, but sometimes they don't interact well together. Like when you first check into a forum, it'll tell you you've got some messages waiting that are addressed to you. And it just says, so you just keep hitting return and you can read those, but sometimes they'll have responses to them and you want to follow them. It seems like sometimes if I follow one of those threads, get the end of the thread, and then come back, it seems like sometimes Delphi loses track of the fact that what I had been doing was reading the messages just addressed to me. And then also, if something goes wrong, if I get crashed or hung up in there, then when I come back again, if I say read new, they'll take it from the highest numbered message. In other words, there's a lot of stuff that just...
I'll start with your last point first, because it's the easiest. Are you familiar with the means of adjusting your message counter? If you just type in the word hi while you're in forum and hit enter, what you'll get is the system will print out what it thinks is your hi message number on the counter. If you type in hi followed by a space and then a message number, it will reset your counter to any given number you choose to reset it to. So you can manipulate the message counter in that respect. Secondly,
I was trying to use the date, the date, just
okay,
to get...
to be honest with you, I don't believe you, Rick, can you do that? I don't think you can. Do it from a date, read from a date.
I think you can.
You're supposed to be able, I've never done it myself.
The exact same here. I believe it's possible.
I've always done it by number myself.
That's the reason I don't understand.
Leave a message, Don Hudson.
Well, come by the booth in another few minutes and we'll give it a try. But what I've always done to accomplish that is to look for the area of the date that I'm interested in, see the message number, and read from that message number. You should be able to read from a date. I've just never, it's never occurred to me to do it. It would seem to be a logical thing for them to have built into the software. I've just never been doing it. So yeah, we'll give that a try and see what happens. In other respects, though, the read command is quite powerful. You can read from Marty Goodman to Don Hutchison 3000, and you'll get every message that I sent to Don starting at message 3000. It's very flexible in that respect. But I would need to investigate more about the matter of using the date as a call. One problem with using dates is that there are all kinds of different ways that one can write a date. And you have to train usually in that case you either have to write very sophisticated software to recognize the different variants of dates. And sometimes you can't even recognize them because you can't distinguish whether you're using European or American notation with day or month first and that sort of thing. Yeah, Rick?
One thing I've noticed that kind of bugs me, it's something that I think they knew about and they were meaning to fix, but I'm not entirely sure that they fixed it yet. At least they hadn't the last time I checked. Was suppose you want to get on, you got 300 new messages, and it's like you want to be able to download those and print them later. So you say, follow, what is it? Follow thread, nonstop. What it'll do is it'll follow the thread. So it'll go, here's one that's got a thread, so it'll skip forward and go to that one in the thread, that one in the thread, that one.
Oh, and then it catches the messages again as it goes through.
And then it pops back up when you're done with the thread, and it goes down, and it hits those again.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to be smart enough to know
To
that
tag a message that it's read in the course of the
There's a fairly
I don't
simple
like that
fix for
either.
that. There's a fairly simple fix for that if they want to do that. Why don't they, instead of saying follow the thread to do a nonstop like that, why don't they just say follow base from message number?
Say follow
forum base from message number.
Well, you can do that. You can say read from.
Yeah.
Nonstop, and it'll do that.
Yeah, that would be much more convenient for most people because then it's chronological.
We're getting towards the end of the time here. I'll take a couple more questions. Yeah.
I have a video output problem in CoCo. I haven't got it solved yet. I don't know if you've ever heard of a similar problem. That is, my colors to the screen change. And like it seems like I had a terminal window was kind of pale yellow, black characters that changed to green. And I flipped over to Windows 7, which is normally blue with white characters, and it was black with yellow characters. And after two or three days of that, it it went away, it went back to normal. In the meantime, I ordered a new gimme chip, put it in, everything was normal, fine. After a couple of weeks using that gimme chip, it did the same thing.
What kind of a monitor are you using?
CMA.
CMA, RGB CMA.
Okay, are you, what environment are you doing? Just storage in basic OS 9?
No, it's not.
Okay, under OS 9, if one program changes the colors of a window while another program is also using the same screen for another window, it will change all the colors on that screen. And you may have run into that problem. I've had several users mention about that, they're a little surprised.
It boots up with the wrong color.
Yeah. Make sure that you're selecting Mon type R for RGB. Put that in your boot file.
Yeah, it's in there. I haven't got it figured out yet. I looked at
It
the.
sounds more like a software than a hardware problem,
Yeah,
but
so
certainly
you
in
have to-
Steve's response, I'm
I've
doing
looked
that
at
too.
hardware, but I have to go back to the disc I got from the radio.
It doesn't
shack,
sound like
so-
the kind of thing that would be caused by a flaky gimme.
No, it is.
Yeah.
I've got a question, two things, really a twofold. Number one is, you can access the character, field where it stores the, data, whatever you wanna call it, the storage area for the character table, for how the characters are generated for the, graphic screen. So you could modify your characters in software for the graphic screen. But I haven't been able to locate where they're located for the text screen.
That's because they're not there.
That's because they're not located, that's right.
Well, they gotta be somewhere.
They're
They have to
carved into silicon inside the gimme chip.
Oh, they're in the gimme.
That's
That's why
right.
it's so much faster.
Those are hardware
That's,
generated text.
okay, and one other
If you
question.
get out a scanning electron microscope and open up the gimme chip, it'll give you
I'll
instructions
find
on how to
it.
modify the character.
There's a little guy that's got this card in there, and he gathers characters.
Where can alright, under OS 9, how can I find out? Now, under level 1, I was able to find out the location of where graphics was located in the memory block. Under level 2, I haven't quite come across that. The
never
command
find it.
seems to be missing,
It's in
and
system
I,
memory, you
Because it's
can't
not
find
good.
it.
I can't seem to locate it.
It's in a file.
Okay, are you asking at runtime when the program's running?
While the program's running, I want to be able
While it's running,
to
it's
get
It's
that
not in your
data.
text space. It's not in your space. You have to do a get to the buffer of the character set or to play around with it. It's through the get put buffer system.
Well, now, I want the graphics screen. I'm not worried about text. I want, like, if I've got a picture in there, I want to be able to read that screen, the data that's used to store to create that screen.
You have to do a get of the window, and then what you do is you take the data and work with it. Because you cannot physically.
I can't do that from Basic 09 or,
You cannot touch a window directly. You have to do a get to bring the information in to a chunk of memory. In the case of Basic 09, I think it's a string that they use, or a get. You have to use the get command to get it, then you read the get buffer with.
can you take the glock command from level 1 and port it over to level
No.
2?
No, won't work.
It has to do with the way the memory is mapped. It's the graphics the memory that you want to diddle with is completely not in your memory map at all. And to do anything with it, you have to go ask the operating system to do it for you, because the operating system knows where it is, but you don't, and you don't, it's.
Well, the thing is
while
that,
your
yeah,
program is running,
the
it's
thing
not
that was
even mapped in at all.
disappointed with the new Basic 09 is the commands aren't there to find it. Where in level 1, at least it was there.
Right, because you can't find it anymore.
The only reason you can
No, if
find
you
it
want to
in
modify
level 1 is
characters, you
because
modify a
system
file.
Well, no, well, okay.
I'm gonna have to call off the formal part of this because we're running a couple, 3 minutes over time already. I wanna thank you for showing up, and it's a real pleasure to see you folks here again. Many of the faces here I recognize from past fests, and hope to see you again. You take care. Enjoy.